Welcome to the October 16th version of Trips and Traps. And I'm Andy Serling, joined once again by Eric Donovan.
It's a great day to be on Trips and Traps, and we got 6 races to take a look at from here at Belmont Park last week. And one of our first races is going to be a race we got some emails about concerning the number 8 horse Milk Run. A lot of people thought that this was a horse that had a bad trip, so we decided to take a look at it.
We did, and we also felt there were a couple other horses that had perhaps worse trips, but this is a good one because there are different opinions about the race.
So we'll start the race here, and no one really gets into any trouble, I don't think, until about the top of the stretch. The 8 is Milk Run. Mesa Girls, the 11, who we think has some trouble. Mesa Girls in the turquoise or silks towards the back, and also the 3, Adorable You, who's racing down toward the inside. They all get into some kind of trouble here in the stretch. But right now, I think the race is pretty smoothly run. I think at this point, Milk Run really has a perfect trip here behind a few pace setters.
Yeah, she's an easy horse to watch because she's the gray sitting in 5th. It's always good to talk about grays. They're easy to watch. Mesa Girl at this point is dropped out of the picture. She's pretty far back, but she'll make kind of a middle move to get herself into position here. And of course, Adorable You, we'll see later, she ends up saving ground, and she gets a good trip until the stretch. In fact, all these horses are very well positioned until the field gets to the top of the stretch. And then a lot of different things happen with them. And it's a question that you decide. Do you think a horse was getting a perfect trip and it was hurt a lot by what happened? Personally, I thought that Milk Run had the least trouble of any of the 3.
Well, Milk Run's going to get in some trouble on the stretch, but you see here the pace is a little quick early on. Now the field's starting to bunch together, and this is where I think a bulk of the trouble starts to happen in a lot of these races. Kind of the second part of the far turn here. You're going to see them all bunch up together. Milk Run's the 8, Mesa Girl's right in behind the 11. Then we're going to see Adorable You get in the screen down on the inside, the number 3 horse there as well. So these 3 horses down inside, when the field starts to bunch up, these are the kind of areas where you usually see horses getting some traffic problems.
The trouble on Adorable You will be obvious. You will see it. There's Milk Run getting blocked now. Mesa Girl is behind her on the outside. What's interesting is Mesa Girl was maybe 2 lengths off the lead, and she was right outside of Milk Run. Now she's 2 lengths behind Milk Run and maybe 4 lengths off the lead. She got really sort of caught in the trouble and had to spin out and lost ground. Now she's in the clear here and Milk Run isn't, and clearly that helps Mesa Girl and hurts Milk Run, who still can't really get in the clear as the 2 might be drifting a little bit. So Mesa Girl had an easier trip when they cleared out in the stretch, but I felt she had more trouble top of the stretch.
Yeah, you might be right there about that. Certainly Mesa Girl looks like she lost a couple lengths there. Milk Run, I don't know. I mean, this is a horse that I don't think is all that talented. Let's put it nicely. But you know, 2 shots already. I think this was actually the horse's 3rd shot in this condition. You're going to get into times of the season now where you might be facing weaker fields than you were facing here. Milk Run, I think if you're betting her just because of the trip, you're making a mistake. But if you sum up what she's going to be running against next time out, take it into consideration. Maybe this is a horse you can bet, but I still wouldn't bet her blindly off the trip.
Yeah, and what's also interesting about the other 2, Mesa Girl and even Adorable You, both of these horses have dramatically improved in their last few starts. Now, I bet Mesa Girl in this race, so maybe you want to say I'm a little biased. I felt she should have won this race, but she would have won it with a perfect trip. Jean-Luc Samina Roeder did the right thing in getting her into position. It just didn't work out for him. It's sort of unfair. People tend to blame riders. He was trying to do the right thing, and he ended up getting caught into a problem. And you could almost say the same thing for Adorable You. The problem is these horses were good prices in this race, and now people might see some trouble, and you've kind of missed your opportunity to cash in on them. Mesa Girl now has that close second staring you in the face. It's a question of where they are, like you said, and what price they are.
Yeah, I think Adorable You of the 3 will probably be the best price out of all of them there, but a horse that's pretty inconsistent. You really don't know what you're getting with her. Even though she had the bad trip there, you know, she might come back in a spot where she looks like she could be okay and still not doing any running, so it's a tough call with her.
Yeah, no, it is. It's just, you know, it's interesting to show the different trips and the different perspectives, because we got so many emails about Milk Run, and nobody seemed to need to mention the other 2 horses, so that's why it was a good race to talk about.
Move on to our second race now. This was the 5th race on October 11th. This was a maiden special weight for 2-year-olds, going a mile and a 16th on the Widener turf course here. The horse we're going to look at early is the 1A Hype in the red and white braces, breaking toward the back of the pack, the number 1A there, part of an entry here for trainer Todd Pletcher with the number 1 Swinging Birdie. Hype gets into some trouble here, kind of gets squeezed back a little bit early on, and this is a horse that's now going to make some kind of move down the backstretch to try to get in contention, but is going to have to steady out a little bit at some point down the backstretch here. Lime Ricky, a horse we're going to take a look at a little bit later on, is in the Dogwood Silks on the outside, running about 6th or 7th right now, right outside of the 1A Hype. And we're going to see here Hype getting a little bit of traffic trouble here. Seems to get a little bit rank in behind horses, and going to have to steady out of that spot there that Hype's in, lose a couple lengths there, and in behind that horse is Lime Ricky.
Yeah, and you know, it's also a question of race dynamics and hype. Here's the trouble we're talking about here. The question you just have to decide about this race is Cal Monaco, who's sitting second in this race. He ended up finishing third, or she finishes third, and gets disqualified in place behind some horses, and we'll see the interference of the stretch. It was a very legitimate DQ. But the question you ask yourself in analyzing these races is, was it better to be in front like Cal Monaco was, or was she doing a lot of work while horses like Hype and certainly Lime Ricky, even though they had some trouble, did they benefit from a somewhat contested pace in here? And which do you think did better running overall in the race?
I always think it's better to be up front in the race, and you're going to have an easier trip there, especially with 2-year-olds in the turf. So I would say maybe a horse like Hype, who's down in the back in the red cap there, is going to be swinging widest here outside of a Lime Ricky in the stretch, going to come about, I would say, 6-7 wide there at the top of the stretch. I would say a horse like Hype probably has a little bit more of an excuse than a horse like Cal Monaco. I don't think the pace was that fast here to say that Cal Monaco ran too hard early on, and now we're going to see an incident here in the stretch where Cal Monaco comes out, affects the winner rescue squad, and in turn affects the horse behind, and that's the 9 Lime Ricky who we were speaking about before.
Yeah, and I once again can't wait until Lime Ricky runs back, and we really will see the trouble here, and we'll continue on here, and he does have some trouble here, but the reality is he was getting a perfect trip until that trouble, and he ends up having no finish whatsoever really after the trouble, and this is a horse that came from Saratoga with 2 good-looking races on paper that he had absolutely perfect trips. And I have a feeling Lime Ricky will be a maiden for quite a while running in turf races. I don't like him. I'm not sure I totally agree with you. I agree the pace wasn't particularly fast, but it's hard to tell the way the turf course is playing. It's a lot more fair. It's not like a summertime, very firm turf. Right. And I think Cal Monaco may have done more work. The truth is, in general, in fairly run turf races, the speed very rarely holds on.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true, but still, nonetheless, when you're in the clear, you know, when you're in the clear and you're stalking one horse out there, you pretty much have, to me, no excuse unless you're going too fast early on. We'll take a look at our third race here in the segment, and this is just one race later, the 6th race on October 11th. This was a claiming race going 6 furlongs on the inner turf course for fillies and mares. We're going to take a look at the 4-horse Karakoram Electra, who was the favorite in the race, I believe, a 9-5 favorite, and breaks a little slowly, gets kind of shuffled back a little bit early on here.
Yeah, she has trouble in here, and we're going to, you know, obviously she's the horse people notice in the race, but a lot of stuff happens in this race, and if you really care about this, you're going to either have to watch the show a few times or go to a replay and watch the head-on and watch things, because different horses will focus on later. One is the 1 Wyatt's Women, who is 68-1 and sort of towards the back of the pack in the orange silks. A horse I think is kind of an interesting horse for somewhere down the road. The trainer, Dennis Laumann, does exceptionally well with horses that he claims. And also Factual Number, who's number 6 in here, gets in trouble at different points in the race. It's hard to see. You really have to keep watching it. We'll show some in the stretch. And also the 3 Privately Approved, who is 16-1. Another horse has some trouble. We'll show you in the stretch.
And a long shot, my sister Diane, I thought had a steady in the stretch as well. So we're going to slow it down a little bit coming up here soon. In the back of the pack is Karakoram Electra in the back there. But down toward the inside, you have Wyatt's Woman in the orange cap. In some trouble there, looking for a way through, and then you're going to have another incident here in the stretch where the 5-horse Ambling Rose is going to come out and affect the 3 Privately Approved and the 6 Factual Number, and we'll see Ambling Rose, who's in about 4th right now in the white blinkers, it looks like, the number 5 horse, come out and affect those 2 horses behind. That is number 3 Privately Approved and the 6 Factual Number. So definitely, Andy, this is a race you're going to have to watch 4 or 5 times before you get a good grasp of what's going on, and then we'll see Karakoram Electra come with the great late finish at the end there once she got clear and managed to escape that traffic trouble at the top of the stretch.
Yeah, there's no argument. She was clearly the best horse, and you know, she was a horse a lot of people may have used heavily the pick 6, and she was supposed to win this race. And if they ran it 10 times, she was going to win it a pretty high percentage of the time. She had trouble throughout, lost position a couple of times in there, and should have won. But as we said, there are a number of horses that had trips here that don't necessarily show up in the chart line, and you really have to watch the race carefully. So to me, you definitely want to watch this race again. For Factual Number, you want to keep your eye on Wyatt's Women. Now, I know we're not going to have any more turf sprints, but Wyatt's Women may be better on the dirt, and I am interested to see where she lands in her next start. But really, any of these horses that we talked about show up, this is a race worth watching a few more times.
And some of these horses might come out of this race and go longer at Aqueduct to go around 2 turns in the turf there. So, you know, even though it's not going to be a turf sprint situation at Aqueduct, some of these horses might be worth keeping an eye on for later down the road.
Yes, and that does it for the first half of Trips and Traps, but we have a second segment, so make sure you watch that. And once again, we really do like hearing your thoughts. It was great to hear the people talking about Milk Run. We've got a lot of emails from people. Trips and Traps at NYRAInc.com. Send emails. You might even get a response from both of us if you're really unlucky.